Hi, Homeworthy. I'm Shane. Welcome to my art studio in Gramercy Park. Come on in.
You're watching Homeworthy, where we believe every home has a story.
I'm Michael Shane Neal. I am living in New York City in Gramercy Park at the National Arts Club, and I'm an artist. So a little background. I have been a member of the National Arts Club since 1999. I first visited the club in 1993, and then I became a member in 1999. And at the time, I did know about this wonderful addition to the club of this tower of artist studios, but I had not visited the studios before. In 1996, I had a chance to visit this very same studio for the first time. So my teacher was Everett Raymond Kinstler, a phenomenal portrait figure painter who lived and worked in this building for 70 years. He's the longest resident ever of the National Arts Club. He did over 2,500 portraits in the studio. So I started studying with him in 1993. I visited the studio the first time in 1996, and then after he died in 2019, the studio was become available. So how I actually got the space is really interesting. The club owns these spaces. So the membership of the club, which is about 1,500 members of the National Arts Club, the members own these studio spaces. There's about 20 residents or so, and there's about 6 studios like this one that are above the brownstones in the front. So the way the process works is that a member first applies to be considered for the apartment, and then once you're approved, you have to come and look at the apartment at a designated time and a day and time. And I set an appointment, and I flew from Nashville to New York. I met Mrs. Kinstler here, Ray Kinstler's widow. She wanted to see the apartment, possibly one last time, because we didn't know if I would actually be the person that would get the studio or not. And we looked at the studio space. We thought the renovations had turned out beautifully. I'd been following along all the process throughout. And so I left that day and said, I want to put my name in the hat. And the way it works is that members who are approved and come for the viewing can then put their name in a hat, and then in the grand gallery downstairs, they draw a name out of the hat, and that person gets the studio. Well, I had studied with Ray Kinstler for nearly 30 years. I'd been a member of this club for over 20. There was no mechanism for the board to just award the studio to any individual, so I couldn't just call up the president of the club and say, gee, don't you want me to have this studio? Well, even if they had felt that way, it's not fair to the membership. So everybody that would want to should have access to the possibility of winning the studio space. So I did all of the proper things, and I stuck my name in the hat, and then the drawing happened that particular hour, 6 o'clock I think it was that evening, and they didn't call me the next day. So I thought, well, I didn't get it. And my daughter was saying, Dad, you should call and find out who got the studio. And I was, I don't know. I don't think I want to know. I'm just so devastated that I didn't get it. And she said, Dad, you've got to call. So finally I phoned the office, and the lady answered the phone. And she said, Mr. Neal, can I put you on hold for a moment? And I said, sure. So she put me on hold for like 2 or 3 minutes. And then she came back on the line and she said, Mr. Neal, you were actually the only person that came to the viewing yesterday, so you have been awarded the studio. Yours is the only name in the hat. And that was because it was COVID. I mean, if it had been any other time, as now, when a space becomes available, there's a long line of members that try to get the studio spaces. But at that moment in time, in the fall of 2020, no one knew what was going to happen next. It was as if New York City was emptying. People were leaving and saying they were never coming back. And I truly believe if it had happened a few years before or a few years after, I might not be sitting here. But I think that Ray Kinstler is smiling as he's looking down. He would have never wanted there to be a pandemic to have made it possible for me. But he definitely, I think, would be happy that I'm now here working in a space that was so familiar to him and so familiar to his teacher before him. As I mentioned, since 1906, I'm the 3rd artist to work in this studio space. So we're headed to the studio, which is on the 10th floor, and it's a really special place because I am actually only the third resident to live and work here since 1906, and that's got to be a rare find in New York City to only have 3 residents in one apartment studio. This is some old plans for the building actually that I found. You can see the design of it here. This is the back 19th Street entrance. And then this is a very detailed drawing of the entrance on 19th Street. So this is a really quick little history of the studio. Frank Vincent DuMond was the first occupant, and he lived here from about 1906 until 1951 when he died. He taught Norman Rockwell, Georgia O'Keeffe, James Montgomery Flagg, and my teacher, Everett Raymond Kinstler, who moved in to the studio right after Mr. DuMond died in 1953 and was here until he died in 2019. And then I took it over in 2019. And I've been here for the last 5 years or so. So come on in. Welcome. So in this sitting space in the studio, I've got a variety of things that I acquired over time. This chair, for example, is a sort of 1830s period American wingback chair that I found in terrible condition with the horsehair stuffing hanging out of it, and I had it recovered. These wonderful barley twist sort of stools have the McNeil tartan on it. My family's Scottish, and we dropped the Mac at some point, but that's the McNeil tartan that I had those covered in. This is a great find just at an antique store, probably kind of a faux bamboo, found it in about 10 years ago, and it's maybe 1970s or so. I have a collection of boxes. This is an old humidor from probably about 1910, an old writing box here, another old humidor with some cigars in it, an old tea caddy, and these wonderful tea caddies, which I just love. I put mints in them and things like that. But it's just sort of a collection of boxes. I also love these old cigar cases. This crocodile one, which I found probably Edwardian. On the mantelpiece, I've got a clock that is 1912. It's actually the date that it was made, and it still works beautifully, keeps time perfectly, chimes on the half hour and the hour. There's a letter, an original handwritten letter by John Singer Sargent on his Tite Street studio, which was his 31 Tite Street studio in London. Howard Chandler Christie, the Christie Girl, these sculptures were done about 100 years ago, and I love Howard Chandler Christie, a great, great artist. That's a little note by Christie given to me by a dear friend named Jim Head, who's done the definitive biographies of Howard Chandler Christie that I encourage everybody to read. My very first copy of Painting Portraits by Ray Kinstler that changed my life when I first discovered that book in 1989, and I decided to put it in a case because it was falling apart, and also because if I hadn't found that book, I might not be here today. Over the fireplace is one of the most important artistic possessions that I have, and it is an original charcoal drawing by John Singer Sargent of a woman named Mrs. McGrath. And Mrs. McGrath was an English lady who lived in London and sadly was killed during the Blitz during World War II. Her home was actually bombed. And her husband survived. She sadly didn't. But there are 2 drawings done by Sargent did. And this is her charcoal that was done in 1919. She was quite the socialite, and she was also known for being one of the greatest amateur tennis players in London at the time. So a lady tennis player. And this was owned by Ray Kinstler. He actually bought it in the late 1980s. It hung in this studio for 30 plus years before he moved it to his country studio. And after his death, his family decided to sell the painting, the drawing, charcoal drawing, and I was lucky enough to be able to purchase it. So I'm really excited to have it come back to this studio where it hung for so long, and it feels like it's back home. There's actually something also connected to John Singer Sargent in this room, and that is this palette. There are only about 5 palettes in the world that belong to John Singer Sargent. Most of them are in museum collections. And then there's one here in Gramercy Park in New York. This palette was owned by John Singer Sargent, probably dates from about 1900 or so. We don't know what pieces he painted with it, but any number of them are possible. And it was given to George Brockhurst, a friend and colleague of Sargent's. George Brockhurst, a British artist who moved here to New York. And then George Brockhurst gave it to an artist named Paul Burns. And then Paul Burns gave it to Everett Raymond Kinstler, and then Ray Kinstler gave it to me on my 50th birthday, just 6 months before he died. So it is truly the most important artistic possession that I have. John Singer Sargent being my hero, and also Ray Kinstler being my hero. And the fact that only artists have owned the palette since the beginning makes it super special. This Chesterfield sofa, purchased at an auction, it's probably 1960s, maybe as late as 1970s, but I really love it. Beautiful green. I love collecting these writing boxes. You know, they say brown is kind of not in right now, and so over the years I've bought a lot of antique boxes and a lot of English furniture. This would have been an old writing box and then the stand made for it. But I like them to be able to put a coffee cup on, or sometimes, you know, it's great for storage. You can stick all kinds of things in there, which is really handy to have. This is actually one of the new pieces that I have in the studio. It's beautifully made, a very heavy piece of furniture. And right now I've got it full of books, and I use it as a desk some, but I also use it as a dining room table. And so I remove the things from the table, I bring it out into this section of the room and put chairs around it. These are wonderful original tapestry barley twist chairs, probably dating from the 19-teens. And they become the dining room chairs. And so we can sit comfortably, 6 people around the table, and it works beautifully. You put candlelight on the table, and it's a really romantic space. I love it. The lanterns are really, really special. This is the very last original light fixtures in the studio annex. These are arts and crafts. They date from 1906. We had them rewired. I've got nice little flickering, almost gas flame in them. But they have been hanging here for over 100 years, and they are just beautiful. And to see the photographs that I have over the many years of Kinstler and DuMond working in space, and these lanterns always appear. It's that one constant that really ties all the history together, and they're really special. If there was one symbol of the studio, I think it would probably be these lanterns. So they have now been burning for 6 years, and I actually do this kind of silly thing. When I leave and I travel, I turn them off, and when I come back, I turn them back on, and any of my friends that live in the park, anybody that I know, if they see the lanterns burning, they know that I'm here painting, and they know I'm here. So it's my way of sort of telling my neighbors that know me that I'm back in the studio, because I come and go quite often. So this is a wonderful early 20th century globe. I've actually gone on a globe site and been able to find out that the date of the globe is between 1910 and 1913, based on what certain countries are named at the time, and maybe there's been some changes of names over time. But really a wonderful artifact, and a globe that once was in a studio space here before mine for many years. You can see a wonderful sketch up there by John Johansson, which was done for a portrait that never quite came to fruition. And Johansson was the artist that I mentioned to you, lived and worked here for many years, that easel belonged to. This is an early Ray Kinstler, done in 1947 when he was a young artist. We don't know who the woman is, probably just a model, but I love having that piece. This is a great little English sideboard, probably dating from the 1930s. And when I'm hosting parties, and I have a big holiday party every year, when I'm hosting parties, I have found that when you get 100 people in this room, it's hard to see where the bar is. And you know, you go to bars and they always have these bottles lit up, and I think it's so beautiful. Well, one day I went on Amazon and I found these great tracing pads for kids. And so when I have a party, I turn on these tracing pads under the bar, and when you come in the room, you know exactly where the bar is, because you can see this lit up at night. So it's just kind of silly, but kind of a fun thing that I do for parties. Next door is the Players Club, which is an old actors and theatrical club that has been in the park since the 1880s, the former home of Edwin Booth. This table was part of the Players Club's collection for over 100 years, and it was falling apart, and I've been a member there for a very long time, and it was given to me in a terrible state of disrepair, legs broken, etc., and I had it restored. And so it's just really a great library table, a wonderful place for me to put my books, and also during the day when I'm working, brushes and a variety of things will find its way onto this table. But it's probably a 125-year-old great library-style table that I love. This book is actually a fantastic Rare book. They're signed and numbered, and it was done on John Singer Sargent's work in 1906, and there was about 250 of them. What's rare is that this still has the box with it, which is very unusual. The box is not in very good shape, but it's got these fantastic reproductions. This is number 220 in the series, done by New York Scribner and Sons, so has a New York connection. But I love having that book, and it's so fragile. I don't open it very often, but it's a great little piece of history related to my hero artist, John Singer Sargent. In the window, there's a little piece of a sculpture from Cedric Egley, a wonderful portrait figure artist in the United States. A skull, which comes in very handy for a portrait figure artist because we're always trying to study the human head and the human skull. My paint brushes, which I have in these great Italian sardine jars, which I just stumbled on one day and thought was a great way to hang on to the brushes there. Just toss them in these sardine jars. And W.C. Fields, which I like. My teacher, Ray Kinstler, my mentor, loved W.C. Fields, so there's a little nod to him there as well. This is a sort of old antique Victorian era bamboo cabinet, which has got a lot of my reference material, tape and brushes and paint. In the drawer here, I keep a lot of the tubes of paint that I access during the day. And then my palette brushes, I use both this traditional kidney-shaped palette and a stationary palette. But this is an old a book stand that I found in an antique store, and it just works really great for holding my palette through the day. If I get tired, I can sit it there at any time. The easels are kind of special, some of them are. This one belonged to John Johansson, who was a really great artist, who lived and worked here in this building for many years on the 12th floor. So this easel has been in the National Arts Club for well over 100 years. When Mr. Johansson died in 1964, it came to Ray Kinstler, who was his student. Ray Kinstler worked on it for years and years, and then I acquired the easel after Ray Kinstler's death, so it's really neat to have the Johansson easel here in the building where it's been for so long. This easel here that I'm working with, which is unusual because it's a double easel, can't find these anymore, belonged to an artist named Leopold Seifert. And it must weigh 150 pounds. It was given to me by his grandson, and his grandson wanted me to have it, and I love having it in the studio. There's actually one of his pieces on the wall. That's done by Leopold Seifert, that portrait of the man with the bow tie. This is an old book stand that I found that will actually tip to an angle, and you can put a book on it. But I put my computer and my screen. So when I am not painting from life, when I don't have someone in the studio posing from life, I use photographs, digital photographs. And so I will actually literally open up my laptop with the digital photographs, put them on the computer screen, and then from the monitor, I will paint each afternoon, each morning. Particularly after a sitting, I will go back to my photographs and I feel as though I totally see the photos in a different way. But when I don't have someone posing from life, I'm using the best I can come up with, which is now a monitor and digital photographs. So I'm working on a variety of portraits at once. I like to bounce between multiple paintings. If you're a portrait artist, then you're going to have sittings scheduled from time to time throughout a week. And sometimes you work on the things that will accommodate the schedule of your client, and so what works for them. And so I may have to work on this portrait this week and another one next week based on the sitting schedule. This is one I'm working on for a healthcare firm, a CEO of a company. And you can see that actually I roll the canvases up and I transport them between studios. So this one I brought up from Nashville in a tube on an airplane, and I am later this week going to actually take it and stretch it onto wood stretcher bars and continue to work on it. On the back is a portrait I'm working on of a doctor, and you can see it's in the earlier stages, and it too is just been unrolled, and I will work on it. This is so durable. The canvases, when they're fresh and new, it's not unhealthy to take them and roll them up. Once a painting has been around for a while, a few years, it's not always the best thing in the world to do to take them and roll them up, because you can cause surface cracking on the painting over time. This is Mr. Toledo that I'm doing ahead. He's going to be honored here at the National Arts Club in a couple of weeks, and as part of his Medal of Honor dinner that they're going to host in celebrating his career in fashion illustration and his wife's fashion design. They're going to have this portrait unveiling, and it will hang downstairs. I am inspired by the people of my time. I mean, I'm living in an era, and I feel as though my job as an artist is to capture the people of my time. And so I am painting portraits of people who are in positions sometimes of power, sometimes of great notoriety, sometimes their lives are being celebrated and being honored with a portrait because of their accomplishments in their life. And sometimes I am painting a loved one. A portrait is being done of a man's wife who he adores, or a woman having her husband painted or their children painted. And portraiture has been a part of how we have celebrated human beings for hundreds, even thousands of years. My work as an artist, I started in 1990 full-time. This is my 35th year to work as an artist. I am trained as an artist, but I found that painting portraits was my passion. That was in college when I first sort of stumbled on the idea of doing commissioned portraits. I had an incredible instructor in college that was a full-time artist who painted portraits for her living, and she was an adjunct professor. And she thought that I had sort of, maybe you'd say, an eye for painting and drawing people. And I began taking commissions my senior year in college. And when I graduated from college, my dad helped me pound the pavement to look for a small studio space in Nashville, Tennessee. And we found one, and I moved in, and I had just enough money from a commission to pay about 3 months' rent. And that was 35 years ago. And so I worked in Nashville as an artist, painting people, working on commission. And I had studied the work of Ray Kinstler when I was in college. I had read a book from cover to cover that he wrote on painting portraits. That was sort of my Bible to go to as a portrait figure painter. And in 1992, I met someone who knew Ray Kinstler here in New York. And she said, I really like your work, and I'd love to tell a friend of mine who's an artist about you. His name is Ray Kinstler. And I was like, are you kidding me? You know Ray Kinstler? Everett Raymond Kinstler is one of my heroes. I mean, he's someone I've been studying since I was in college. And so she ultimately spoke to him about me and said, I would like to introduce you all. And she did. And I came to New York the first time in 1993. And I got here with the invitation to see Ray Kinstler. And he had to, it's a long story, but he basically had to cancel our meeting because he had a portrait commission in Washington that he had to go to do something with. And we spoke on the phone, and he said, I'm so sorry that I'm not going to be able to see you. And I said something on that phone call that changed my life, and I'm so glad I did. He said, I'm anxious to see your work. He actually said, I'm eager to see your work. And I said, well, Mr. Kinstler, I brought a few things to show you in my portfolio, and maybe someday I can meet you and show you what I'm doing. And he said, oh, I feel so bad that you've come all this way, and I can't see your work. He said, can you photograph the work and send it to me? And I said, yes, sir, I can. And so when I got back to Nashville, I photographed everything in my portfolio. I wrote him a letter. I sent it to him here in New York to this very address. And I didn't know if I'd ever hear from him again. And lo and behold, a few months later, he sent me a letter back with all of the photographs where he had taken a Sharpie and he had made suggestions on the photographs. Like, I think I would, instead of putting the man's hand here, I would have put it here, and he sketched the hand over here. And instead of having him cross his legs, I would have had him sitting like this, and he sketched it on the photographs. And then he wrote at the bottom of the letter, send me more when you have them. But there was one thing that I did that also changed my life at that moment. I had done a little charcoal drawing of him from an old photograph inside of a book that I couldn't even see the photo. It was so small. And this is before the days of being able to Xerox and blow things up. And I had worked part-time at a jewelry store, and I had a loop. And I held the loop against the photograph and looked at his photo, and I did this charcoal drawing. It's actually on the wall right there. It's 30 years old now. It's more than 30 years old. And I stuck that drawing inside the envelope with a return addressed, stamp and addressed envelope inside. And I asked him in my letter, would he autograph the charcoal and send it back to me? And he autographed it and sent it back to me. And he wrote on there, to Michael Shane Neal, he said, to Michael Shane Neal, a strong, well-handled portrait from your delighted victim, Everett Raymond Kinstler, and dated it 1993. And why was that drawing important? Because at that moment in Ray Kinstler's life, he was falling in love with a woman named Peggy Chartier, who he later married, Peggy Kinstler. And she was spending her first ever visit with him in New York City first ever weekend in New York to visit her new boyfriend. And when they walked in the National Arts Club that day and he collected his mail, that giant envelope was there. He turned it around and looked at it and said, "I don't know anybody in Nashville. Who is this?" And when he got up to the apartment, he opened it up, and there was the drawing, there was my letter, there was the photographs. And he said, "Oh, yeah, I remember this kid. I talked to him on the phone recently." And Peggy said all weekend long, that drawing sat on the table in the studio, and they fell very, very in love and married. And I feel like that his life changed at that moment, and I happened to be at sort of a part of that moment in a way. And as Peggy said, in many ways, she had children by her first marriage. He had children by his first marriage. They did not have kids by their second. In many ways, I was sort of their only child from their union. And the point of the whole story is that I'm a young guy who finds this elder statesman artist who takes an interest in me and where I am in my life and my career at that moment, and feels as though he can make a difference in my life and help shape the artist that I would become and am still becoming today. Behind here is tucked a couple of pieces of art. This is a fun story. So this was a portrait of a man that was the president of the National Academy of Design. And Mr. Johansson was painting this portrait from life on the 12th floor and decided that it wasn't going well, so he abandoned it, rolled it up. One day, Ray Kinstler went to see his teacher on a July day, and the old man was sitting in front of the fireplace burning canvases, cutting them up with scissors and burning them, things that he had abandoned and stacked in the corner. And Ray Kinstler said, "What are you doing, John?" And he said, "I'm so afraid I'm going to die and people will find these paintings that are incomplete, that are not fully realized, and I don't want them to end up in a yard sale." So Kinstler was looking at them, and he saw this wonderful portrait of this fellow and said, "Gee, John, this portrait the head is beautiful. I know you haven't got to the hands, but the head is beautiful." And Johansson picked up the canvas, took his scissors, he cut the head out, handed the head to Ray Kinstler, and then he burned the rest of the man's body into the fireplace. So Kinstler framed it and kept it all these years and gave it to me for my birthday one year. So it's just an amazing story. This was saved from the flames by a younger artist from an older artist. This is the earliest known Ray Kinstler. It was done in 1938. It's a pen and ink. It was given to me by someone that had passed it down in their family. The back says that Kinstler was visiting with his parents, this couple, on Long Island, and then while he was there, he did a couple of drawings from his imagination, and they've kept them all those years. Above is a mural proposal for a subway station by Mr. DuMond, Frank Vincent DuMond, who was working in the studio originally, and the first occupant of the studio. It is likely that this mural presentation proposal was done in this studio space. As far as we know, he either didn't get the job or this subway station is no longer open. But it's a really neat little piece of New York history, and could have been, or possibly it's one of those ghost stations that we never see anymore, but it's a really neat design for a mural done by Mr. DuMond, who was a great portrait figure painter, but is also a great illustrator as well. So this is the bedroom, and I mentioned earlier that on the original plan of the layout of this space, this would have been the parlor, but it became the bedroom in 1953 and has remained the bedroom since. When I acquired the space, this was closed off, and there were bookcases in front. And actually, Mrs. Kinstler, who lived here for over 25 years, didn't even realize there were doors here. But I removed the bookcases and opened up the doors, and I can close them at night if I want. I actually share the space often with my two daughters who come up from Nashville. So in order to maximize the amount of sleeping spaces, we've got the twin beds. So sometimes one of my daughters there, I'm sometimes in one of the beds, and then my other daughter is upstairs in the loft. Make it work. It's sort of New York life. We figure it out. This is a little desk area for me. And I found this desk in Savannah, Georgia, saw it in the window of an antique shop. The shop was closed. I got the number and the address. I called them when I got back to Nashville. I bought it, and it cost as much to ship it to me as it did to buy the thing, but I just love it. It's such a wonderful small little desk, and I love barley twist. So both the studio and this bedroom space have fireplaces. We are discouraged, to say the least, from burning any wood any longer in these old fireplaces. So I was able to come up with these artificial flame sort of faux insert fireplaces, and it really works well. It almost looks like it's real burning wood at night, particularly. On the mantle, a few things that mean something to me. An old photograph of me painting with Ray Kinstler out in New Mexico, and some more of these biscuit jars that I love from England. This is one of the oldest things that I own. This clock dates from about 1810, and believe it or not, with just a little work every 5 or 6 years, it still keeps wonderful time. And I love the tick-tock all through the night. Some people, it would drive crazy. I love the sound of it. It does not chime, though, so it doesn't wake me up in the night from that. On the wall is a wonderful illustration by James Montgomery Flagg, an original watercolor by Flagg. It was done for a Hearst newspaper in 1910, and then a wonderful, beautiful little etching of Anders Zorn, which I just love. And I love Anders Zorn, the Swedish artist. It's a fantastic old burl wood chest that I found that's probably mid-19th century. It's an old radio. And this is really fun. This is actually a cartridge case. It would carry a big bullet like that went in a cannon. British, only the British would come up with a beautiful way of decorating this from World War I. And I made this old cartridge case into a lamp, which I thought would be kind of fun. I still wear detachable collars, and this is a detachable collar case. I'm probably one of the few people left that do that, but I love wearing them. I don't have one on today, but I do wear them. And I store them in this old case there and bring them out and button them on your shirt. The beds are new, but I really love them, sort of bamboo style, and I think they work nicely in the room. And the drapes, not drapes, but these Roman shades, came from some old drapes that I had in another house, and I kept the fabric. It's English fabric. And then I have a cousin of mine named Kay Neal, who's phenomenal, who does a lot of the work for Bunny Williams and some other designers in the United States. Kay is famous in her own right. Kay actually made these into Roman shades for me out of old curtains that I had. In the corner is a calling card from Carlos Duran, who was John Singer Sargent's teacher. And above is a great reproduction from a client of mine who commissioned me to do a drawing of her grandfather. He died on the Titanic with his wife, her grandmother, the Strausses, who owned Macy's department store. And when I was working on the drawing for them, she said to me, I actually have a letter on Titanic stationery from my grandmother that was mailed from Cherbourg, France. There was one bag of mail mailed from the Titanic, and it was mailed in France when they stopped to pick up some more passengers. And she actually took it in the frame down to Kinko's, took it out of the frame, had them Xerox it, and she sent me a copy of it. So you can see it's the RMS Titanic. And Mrs. Strauss is writing to a friend of hers named Mrs. Burbridge, who they'd been staying with in England. And she actually sent them some flowers that were in their stateroom when they arrived on the Titanic. And she's writing her to thank her for the flowers. And she's also mentioning some things about the ship in the letter and how magnificently appointed it is. And she says we are well on our way across to Cherbourg, which of course, sadly, they did not make it. And in the movie, the latest movie done about 20 years ago, you might remember this couple depicted holding each other in bed as the Titanic goes down. And that is the Strausses that are being depicted. And this is actually a reproduction of the charcoal drawing that I did of Mr. Strauss for Pam Haber, his granddaughter, which I love doing. And was in one of those little moments as a portrait figure painter that you think to yourself, wow, it is so fun to connect with people that have such amazing stories and such connections to the past, which is really not that long ago. You might think it was a long time ago, but it wasn't that far in the past. So what I love most about my home is the incredible history behind it and the fact that this has been a creative space since the day that it was built and that it was designed for artists. There are people, in all honesty, that live in this building that probably haven't thought about the fact that artists worked here for many, many years. This is a working artist studio. These windows are facing dead north so that the light that comes in the room every day is steady all through the day. No direct sunlight comes in. There is several acres across in front of me, which is Gramercy Park, and historical buildings below. So the airspace, the sky that I'm seeing from the 10th floor here is protected forever. Sadly, I can't see the Chrysler building anymore because a couple of blocks over, they built a new building and it blocked my view of the Chrysler building, but that's New York, that's the way it is. But I think my favorite part is that when I come in and close the doors, I'm in the middle of Manhattan. I'm here in one of the busiest cities in all of the world. But because I sit back off the street several acres from the park, it's very quiet, it's very private, and it's really this little, it's kind of this little haven in the middle of the city that you feel as though you've stepped back in time when you walk into the park, surrounded by these old buildings. And here I am tucked back behind the National Arts Club in this very private space. And I feel it's a place I can think, I can create, I can feel as though I'm removed from a lot of the world. And there's an atmosphere here that is inspiring, that makes you feel like you can't wait to get to work every morning. You're so stimulated by what you do. And I have the privilege of being able to live here and work here. And so in the bedrooms in the back there, I roll out of bed in the morning and I can't wait to get in the studio and get to work. It's really extraordinary that I have found myself as a part of the fabric of this space, and I am honored, I am humbled by it. I am reminded every day that I owe a lot to that opportunity, and I work really, really hard to try to be the best artist I can. And I'm inspired by this space, and I can feel these artists here. And up until recently, I've always said there was no such thing as ghosts, but I've actually changed my mind. I've seen a couple of things here I can't explain and heard a few things that I know I can't explain. So I am convinced that both Frank DuMond and Ray Kinstler are pacing these floors at night sometimes and probably fussing with some painting that they couldn't get quite right. So we're in my kitchen now, and it is a real proper kitchen for New York City, meaning that it's big enough to turn around. It's actually big enough to have a few people in. But if you know that it was previously a bedroom, then you can understand the scale of it. But it's a very nice sized kitchen in this studio apartment. The total square footage of this apartment is about 1,250 square feet. But this is a very nice sized kitchen. You can see these were the old double doors that led from what was the parlor into the bedroom. I've just closed those off and just hung a painting over the front of it. And then I've got a wonderful rug that I found on 6th Avenue here in New York. This is a very old rug, so dates from the 19th century, 1850s, somewhere in there. On the wall are a couple of photographs of the studio apartment as it was in about 1920 or so. And you can see here, this is an old shot of it from looking back at from the north windows into the studio space. There's the catwalk balcony. And then this is an artist named Louis Betts, who we believe would sublet this apartment in the summertime when Mr. DuMond would go to his studio in Connecticut, in Old Lyme, Connecticut. And this is a very famous artist, and he's working right near the balcony in the studio space. And I think that's fun. He's actually in his spats here, which I love. It's a really neat kind of photograph. So we use the countertop here not only as a workstation when we're preparing meals, but also a place to eat. I also have a little English style table that I can fold out if I want to have a kitchen table. But this is where I spend most of my time having my meals. There's an old calendar there that I picked up in an English antique shop that I love having. And then, this workspace over here, I've got NAC for National Arts Club. This is from Anthropology. This whole sort of set of dishes came from Anthropology. I think it's called the, Honeycomb, or no, Parisian something series. I forget the name of it. But anyway, I enjoy having this station for coffee and tea. And it's a very useful and comfortable kitchen. And I just love it. And we're facing 19th Street. And this whole building goes from 20th Street to 19th, so it's a huge structure, and we're at the very back. Just there on the wall is a couple of little things that are important to me. One is a menu from a night honoring Joseph Jefferson, who was a great comedic actor and was the president of the Players Club next door, and I'm a member of the Lotus Club, so it's kind of special to have it, and he signed it there. And then this is a little piece of a drawing that came from some sketches that Ray Kinstler had done for some illustration, and I was able to sort of get that ironed out and framed, even though it's in kind of rough condition, old newsprint. It's kind of neat to have. And I've got a copy of the original finished illustration. But I have to say, there's one fun thing on the wall here. When I moved in, Peggy Kinstler gave me this as a sort of housewarming present. This is Everett Raymond Kinstler when he was about 18, 19 years old, with his teacher, Frank DuMond, who lived here for so long before Kinstler. And then this is Ray Kinstler, and this is me in 1996, the first time I actually visited the studio. And then 20 years to the month exactly, Peggy Kinstler tried to stand us in just the same spot in the studio and photograph us again. And so now he's 90 years old instead of 60-something or 70 years old. And he looked at this photograph and he said, well, either I've shrunk and you've gotten taller, or what. Anyway, you can see he's sort of settled a bit. And then there's Kinstler in the studio with Tony Bennett, who is the great Tony Bennett musician, who Ray Kinstler and Tony Bennett were lifelong friends. And Mr. Bennett has visited the studio on many, many occasions. So just a few little reminders of the past and my relationship and friendship that's been so important to me and changed both my life and my career. I've been lucky to have had great parents and also great art parents in Ray Kinstler and his wife Peggy. One of the beauties of the studio is it was essentially untouched. From 1906 until 1951, when Frank DuMond, who was here as the first occupant, passed away, the original apartments had no kitchens in them because downstairs is the dining room and you could have breakfast, lunch, and dinner. I'm sure, maybe when hot plates were invented, people started doing that in some of these spaces, but originally they didn't have kitchens in them. In 1951, when Frank DuMond died, they did some updates to the studio space and they created a little kitchenette in the studio, had 1950s kind of appliances. And the electrical was still the original from 1906. The plumbing was the original from 1906 with, these enormous fixtures, these giant, tubs and sinks and toilets, those freestanding sinks. So that was what it was until Ray Kinstler died in 2019. He never did anything to it. He didn't even paint the walls. It was just the way he wanted it. He was happy to have it that way. And he only patched things as they needed repair along the way. But essentially that was how it was in 2019 when he died. In 2019, the fall of 2019 and in 2020, the club said that we are going to have to do a major renovation. So they hired an architect, and he did a beautiful job sort of reimagining this space, keeping everything the same in terms of the bones, but updating it where it was necessary, making the flow a little better with a change or two we can talk about. But it took several months, and they did a really marvelous job on it. Okay, so we're in the hallway here that leads from the studio space to the kitchen or the bedroom. But what's interesting is the hallway's actually changed. The opening that we go into the studio now was not there originally. It actually went to the left and then came through in the entrance. And part of the renovation, we enlarged the size of the bathroom, added a laundry room, and then changed the way that we come down this corridor. But inside, I've got a few photographs of some of my commissions and experiences of the past. And I need to update it a bit, but as a sort of a look at a few of the years that have gone by and a few people that I've painted. And then this is a wonderful painting of Somerset Maugham, the author, that Ray Kinstler did in 1947. And then a wonderful drawing, this fantastic drawing by Bettina Stanke. Nobody knows her much today, but she was an incredible portrait artist who lived out west, an illustrator, and her father had been a famous illustrator and caricature artist for the New York Times. And Bettina was a dear friend, and here's Bettina here. And then Ray Kinstler had taken me to see her as part of a workshop that I was studying with him out west back in the 1990s. And so I love old movies, and I love John Barrymore. And this is a drawing that I did of John Barrymore. I actually did a painting of him for the Players Club next door posthumously. He died in 1942. But Ray Kinstler and I had an ongoing running gag that went on for 20 plus years about John Barrymore's last movie, which was called World Premiere. It's the movie that cue cards were invented for, because John Barrymore sadly was at the latter stages of a severe addiction to alcohol, and he was on set drunk most days, and he couldn't remember his lines, so they started writing them down on cards and holding them up so that Barrymore could read. And if you watch World Premiere, you'll know how bad it is, because Barrymore literally looks to the side and says, yes, madam, what should we? It's just terrible. But anyhow, this is a little bit of some of the fun correspondence I had with Ray Kinstler about Barrymore over the years, and he did this little drawing of Barrymore, and it's just a little fun wall. So one of my heroes is Joaquin Sorolla, and Sorolla was the Spanish sergeant. He was the most amazing artist and had this incredible vitality to his work and immediacy to his work. And this is a maquette that I purchased from the National Hispanic Society in 1996. And there was only 6 of them made. This large sculpture was done posthumously for the Madrid Museum and the Hispanic Society in the 1930s. And this had been sitting in the museum for sale for about 50 years when I bought it. And I actually went and bought a backpack across the street and got it back to my studio. And I've rubbed his head so much it's beginning to sort of burnish and become golden because I'm looking for some good luck from Sorolla. And then this is a photograph of Mr. DuMond when he moved in 1906, his signature there. And then the only known photograph of Mr. and Ms. DuMond sitting actually in the studio just near the north window. And they're having, looks like dinner on a rolling cart there, coffee and what looks to be maybe meatloaf. And it's just fun to see how long that he was here, over 50 years. And this is not long before he passed away in 1951. So I was really thrilled that I was able to find that photograph and this one too. And then I purchased that signature online. These doors that you see lead out into the actual foyer of the studio. And they had been taken down, and we were able to salvage them from the basement of the building, and then I had them put back up. For all the years I was coming here, they had been hung. But at some point, Ray Kinstler, I said all the years, there was a point at which Ray Kinstler did take them down. They stored them in the basement, but I was able to get them back up and have them rehung, and that gives a little added level of privacy. It reduces the sound out in the hallway near the elevator. If I'm having a phone conversation, there's a couple of barriers between that and the outside, so it just gives me a little more privacy, and I can also turn my music up a bit louder and not bother anyone. Remarkably, these walls are brick. So the interior walls of the studio were made of solid brick, and the idea was that the room or the building would be fireproof and that the fire would not spread from apartment to apartment. It would be contained and it would stop the building from burning. So it is incredibly quiet. I never hear neighbors above or to the sides. I mean, this huge 20-plus foot ceiling, and it is solid as a rock. And the only difficulty you really experience is when you go to hang something on the wall and you can't get it in. For example, the mirror that's just there, that belonged to Mr. DuMond, has been hanging in this studio for over 100 years in order for an artist to stand and look at his work in reverse. And I moved it from this spot to this, and I thought we were going to have to get a jackhammer to try to get the nail in the wall. It's so solid. So an interesting story of the staircase. This was not here originally in 1906. In 1906, the stairs were actually in the foyer, and they went up and went to the landing. But in the 1930s, during the Depression, when they were trying to increase housing, affordable housing during the Depression in New York, and here in the club to try to increase the number of apartments, Mr. and Ms. DuMond actually gave up 2 bedrooms upstairs and a bath in order to create another apartment. So when they closed that off to go into that part of the apartment, they actually added these stairs, probably about 1935. They're certainly not to code, but we can get up and down them just fine. You just have to be careful. So now I'll take you upstairs and show you the loft and the catwalk where I keep all of my books. So I have a passion for art books and for all books in general. I love books. And so I've got a lot of my inspiration here. So period artists, John Singer Sargent, Sorolla, I just mentioned, Andrew Zorn from Sweden, Whistler, on and on and on. And lots of art instruction books. And then I love biographies. So I've got a lot of biographies that I've read over the years that are here. And then a lot of books that people have given me, which I treasure. And they're organized for the most part by artists and sometimes by museum collections and by periods. But I come up here to access my library and reference books, reference paintings that I want to look at to be inspired as I'm working on something maybe with a similar problem that I'm trying to solve, and I'm looking to an artist from the past to help me over the hump. A couple of other things that I've got up here, one that'll be maybe a little tough to see, but this is a plaque that came from an old Connecticut schoolhouse, a bronze, and it's got a quote from the strenuous life speech, as it's known, the strenuous life speech done by Theodore Roosevelt. And it's talking about how important it is to be a person that tries things, even if failure is likely. It is better to try and to fail and then to pick yourself up and keep trying again. And so I just love this quote, and I love the plaque. And so the wood itself was falling apart that it was on, so I removed it from that, and then I just mounted it here on the bookcases. I also have this drawing by Ray Kinstler done of George Bernard Shaw in 1947. Shaw actually autographed it, and it said, "Good heavens, is this me, G. Bernard Shaw?" Kinstler owned it for years. It was his in his personal collection. He sold it at one point in the 1980s. And then the man that owned it, who collected all things Shaw, actually died, and his entire estate went online auction, and I bought it at auction. And below is a wonderful gift from Ray Kinstler to me of a Charles Dana Gibson letter to James Montgomery Flagg in 1911. It came from Flagg to Kinstler and to me, which I treasure. So when I acquired the lease to the studio officially in 2020, Ray Kinstler had kept books up here, but they were just sort of purchased bookcases that lined the walls. And I decided that I wanted something more permanent. So a wonderful artist friend of mine who lives in Connecticut named Kathy Anderson, her son is a great craftsman, and he built these bookcases for me in Connecticut out of oak, brought them here in sections. We hoisted up the sections over the loft with straps, and then over a period of a couple of weeks, he reconstructed it and built them in as permanent fixture here in the loft space. And I just love it. They are just a beautiful addition. Most people think they've been here forever. And I really think that they did an exceptional job on them. I know that, I think that most people believe that they were here since 1906. So a few things that are up here. These are French Art Deco. Still have the original, actually, seat cushion in them. And I bought them from a wonderful antique dealer that I've purchased things from for years and years. And this was purchased off of Amazon. I could not find a table that was narrow enough for up here, and I wanted one as a little landing spot for the books. And so I bought it off of Amazon. This is a palette that both my teacher and I used, and I treasure that, and I've got it here in a case. And I've had these arts and crafts, I probably bought those from Restoration Hardware about 1990, and I've had them for years. They've been in so many different spaces. But I will actually sit up here with one of the chairs. My daughter comes up here a lot and uses the space. We look out over the park and the beautiful view that I have, and I enjoy the space a lot. I think it is one of the great benefits of this studio is to be able to look down on my work from above. And I feel like I learn something about my paintings when I look at them from this perspective. It's almost like looking at them in the mirror. You see it in a different way. So I really enjoy being up here. I'm a member of a number of wonderful New York clubs, and I enjoy them so much. Was a tradition here in this city for generations to form private clubs that celebrated the arts, literature, painting, the theater. And I enjoy a number of club memberships here in the city. It's where I entertain people. It's where I spend time with my friends and colleagues that are also members. And it's a very, very special part of living in the city. This club, National Arts Club, I literally live in a club. And so my life in the city outside of the studio often connects with some of my club memberships, like the Lotus or the Salmagundi Club or the Players Club next door and some others. It's really a very, very special part of living in New York. So my idea of how to decorate the space is, number one, every single thing in these rooms has a story. There is nothing that was bought because I saw that in a magazine and I thought that would be a cool design element. Everything has just been sort of curated over time, and it's just grown over time. So everything in every corner I can tell you something about and where it came from and how I came to have it. It is a combination of things that were given to me, things that I found on my travels, things that I found in New York City in local thrift shops, just as I'm going to pick up a sandwich and walk by a thrift shop and pop in and see something I have to have. Sometimes I found things online in online auctions, or eBay, one of my favorite things in the world. eBay and eBay UK, which I think is one of my favorite little secrets, is to actually go on eBay UK and not just on the US eBay. And so that's how I've acquired things over time. It is both functional, so there are things that are necessary for my work as an artist, and then there's an element of a decorative quality of the things, because instead of just sticking brushes in a jar, I found these fantastic old sardine jars from Italy, 19th century, that I thought would be great to hold brushes. So sometimes I sort of try to create in my mind a new idea of how I might have something very useful, but maybe give it a little bit more of an attractive, decorative kind of element or aspect to it. Welcome to the National Arts Club here in Gramercy Park, a beautiful private club located at 20th and Park Avenue. There's always something going on here, and we're going to go upstairs and take a look inside. The club was founded in 1898, and in 1906 they acquired these two brownstone buildings. They did a major renovation, and it was the first private club in New York City to accept both men and women as full members. So we're going to take a look at the parlors, which are really gorgeous and a very active part of the club each night. So inside one of the parlors here at the National Arts Club, there's incredible woodwork, as you can see, all around the beautiful room here. There's also lots of examples of artists' work, artists who were members or artists who lived here for many years. Gorgeous pieces of sculpture, beautiful paintings, lots of decorative arts. Stained glass is also a big part of the National Arts Club, and you'll see it all throughout the building. Donald McDonald was one of the major artisans that worked on the stained glass here, and it is a legend that Tiffany also apprenticed with Donald McDonald on this building in a beautiful glass dome that you'll see just inside the dining room. But it is really one of the most beautiful and I think one of the warmest areas of the club to just sit and visit and have a chance to chat with friends. So there's been a lot of wonderful artists that have been a part of this club, both living here and a part of the membership of the club. We have a lot of sculptors. There was an incredible sculptor named Paul Manship who lived here for many years. He did Prometheus in Rockefeller Center, the gold statue below the ice rink there that many people know from New York. Vanneau was another artist member here, a beautiful painter. And my friend Mark Mellon, who's a sculptor, he's been here since about 1982 on the third floor of the building. And Mark is a fabulous figure and portrait sculptor, and I just love his work, and he's a big part of this club. I couldn't help but mention this wonderful sculpture of Edwin Booth. Edwin Booth lived next door, was one of the most famous Shakespearean actors in all of the 19th century, famous actually now because his brother, John Wilkes Booth, sadly shot Abraham Lincoln. But before that happened, Edwin Booth was known throughout the world as the great interpreter of Shakespeare, and he's a big part of Gramercy Park, and this beautiful sculpture represents him well. This fantastic portrait is by Wayman Adams, who was a great artist who lived and worked here at one time. And he was actually known for his flamboyant style, his very active brush, the great energy you see when he's painting. My teacher, Ray Kinstler, was one of his students, and this is just a magnificent example of his portraiture. So this is 150 or 200 years worth now almost of age. Men smoking cigars and gas lamps and wood-burning fireplaces. Here's a complete restoration of the doors and what they would have looked like when they were new, say 1850 or so. And you can see how gorgeous the wood is and this beautiful grain, which I just absolutely love. So Governor Tilden was so afraid of being assassinated. Following Lincoln's assassination, as a politician, Tilden was afraid that he might someday be a victim of assassination as well. And so when he renovated this house, he created pocket doors all throughout the mansion to slow down some intruder who might be after him. So you will see tons of these giant, heavy pocket doors. I can barely even open it. There we are. And I guess the idea was that if you were running through here with a gun trying to get Governor Tilden, he can keep shutting doors to slow you down. And the staircase, I think, is just absolutely glorious. Really, really beautiful. Goes up 5 floors total. Behind here is a great painting by Will Burnett. Will Burnett was a friend of mine. He lived to be 103 years old. Barack Obama gave him the Medal for the Arts when he was 100. And Will Burnett lived here for many years on the 9th floor and was really an artist, produced truly remarkable works of art all of his career. Inside here is the dining area of the club. We've got this remarkable dome. I mean, holy cow, this beautiful stained glass dome that was done by Donald McDonald. As I mentioned, it is believed that Tiffany also apprenticed on the project when he was working on this dome. It used to be lit naturally, but now they've had to cover it. But it is still one of the great features of the National Arts Club. The bar, which is very busy every night. Here begins the dining portion of the club. I had mentioned earlier that this house has had many layers of history, and at one time, Governor Tilden had seen his home as the future first ever public library in New York City. And sadly, it didn't work out that way, but he designed it that way. And the idea was that books would be around on these shelves. And there's one little secret thing here. If you know where to look, if you find it, there's still book rests that are inside the walls. So you would take your books off the shelf, put them on the book rest. And there's still some of those hidden throughout the club. One of the traditions of the club has been that for many years, artists that were members would donate a piece to the club, an example of their work. And we've amassed a very large collection of work because of that. So you can see it displayed all throughout the National Arts Club and in the Grand Galleries, and it is always revolving. We have a fabulous curator, Mr. Yonner, who does a beautiful job displaying this work, pieces of sculpture, paintings, and all kinds of decorative arts. This is the main dining room, and as you can see again, more giant pocket doors, which I can hardly even move. Glorious details. Inside here is the main dining room. So they will serve lunch Monday through Friday, dinner as well in this room. Famously, at this table right here, Placido Domingo and Princess Diana once sat and had dinner before an event. These gorgeous porcelains that you see and the old bookshelves, which is beautiful. And then the old dumbwaiter, which some people say it's one of the first dumbwaiters in a private home in New York. It might be around 1840, possibly. And I just love this room. Here's a wonderful Paxton. Paxton was a great American painter. He was a member of this club, and you'll see him in the Metropolitan Museum and every major museum in the world. But you can see what a skillful artist he was. Truly, truly remarkable. So this is interesting. These skylights were a part of the renovation in 1906 to the brownstones. They were covered in World War II. They were actually tarred and blacked out for fear at that time that New York City might be attacked by the Germans or maybe the Japanese during the war. And so they actually covered them, and they remained covered until about 3 years ago or so. And we were given a grant, and we were able to restore these wonderful skylights. And you get a little glimpse to what is the back building, the annex, which was added in 1906 for artists. So we're going to go into the Grand Gallery, more great stained glass, more giant pocket doors. And this is a fantastic space of always revolving exhibitions. This is the winter show. It's up through, well, it's actually already completed. They're getting ready to change it out. There's an event here just about every day and certainly every night. They've just this morning stacked the chairs up from a major talk they had here last night. A few days ago, they had a jazz performance in this space. You can see that it used to be lit by skylights. It's now artificially lit, but at one time it was all naturally lit. And you could see everyone from Andy Warhol to, you name the most traditional painter from the past, Impressionist painters. There is always something interesting to see in this space, and I just love it. We had his memorial service in this room, and just hundreds of people packed in here and out, and I gave one of the eulogies, which was very special. So the room has seen so many activities over the years, celebrations, and also celebrations of life, like my teacher, who was here for so long as a resident. So this is the pool room, and it's dedicated to Governor Tilden. And this is his table, or one of his tables. It's a beautiful artifact from the days when he was here. I mean, he was so famous, cover of I don't know how many Harper's Weekly, which you see represented there, and some photographs of him throughout his life. It's really remarkable to think about what an important person and historical character he was of the 19th century, but then today very few people probably remember Governor Tilden. But Samuel Tilden was one of the 19th century's most important political figures in America. So the National Arts Club was formed with one purpose, and that was to educate the American people in the arts. And that was dance, painting, sculpture, literature, you name it. And It's always been a very important part of the club in its mission of being able to not only encourage and motivate and inspire artists, but to also bring patrons and artists together. So there's been a big part of the membership of the National Arts Club that are art lovers, that are people that are in the business or are connected to the arts in some way. And these patrons being here at the club with the artists has always been a very important relationship. What makes a house a home for me is being able to live around things that have a story, things that mean something to me, and that when I turn, there's something there that reminds me of a moment in my life or a moment in time that is special to me. Also, I think what makes a house a home for me has to be the art on the walls and the art that are around you. And that can be your kids' drawings from kindergarten stuck on the refrigerator, or something that you've acquired from an auction house. Whatever it is, as long as it is a piece of art that means something to you, that you love, that you think is beautiful, that brings beauty to your life, maybe brings peace and calm to your life. But probably the other thing that I think is really important about making a house a home, and that is that it is your retreat, your escape, and it's a place where you feel most like yourself and most comfortable. So there's a few things that I'm looking for in both my apartment and my home in Nashville.
Thanks for watching. Be sure to go to homeworthy.com for exclusive content, shopping guides, and so much more.